What's up everyone, welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be bringing you a tier list about the current balance that we're facing in AoE4 right now. I'm going to be talking about the meta, sort of what's happened recently, the developments that we've seen and how it's affected the civilizations, and just in general try to rank based on my experience in tournaments, what I've seen, and just in general how I feel about the civs right now, and maybe even make some predictions about what might happen in the future with the civilizations. So let's not wait any longer. Let's get started. I want to start off by putting Lancaster in S tier. And I'm going to be going through every single tier in sort of order. So S tier for me is the best tier, obviously. And I think Lancaster, even with the changes recently, deserve very well to still be in S tier. Somehow the developers made some changes to the way that manners work so that you don't really need to build as many of them now. That means that your aggression works a little bit differently, but largely the outcome is the same. You're still playing feudal age aggression or a fast castle type strategy with Lancaster, and it comes across as being the same power level right now, able to counter many of the very good civilizations, and since it doesn't rely on pro scouts, it's largely unchanged. The next civilization I want to talk about is going to be Malians. And Malians, I would not normally rank this high, but I've seen numerous professional players rank it extremely high. And many of them are picking it as their first civilization in drafts as well. So they might be banning Malians, Lancaster, China, and then they pick Malians first because they believe it's such a good civ. And I agree with them. A lot of people do not know how to counter Malians. So Malians, why are they strong? They're strong because they are, again, unchanged. Many of the civs, like Rus, JD, HRE, have all been largely affected by the changes from the Pro Scouts. But what that means is, for Malians, they're not affected. They are still heavily reliant on a gold economy that allows them to make cows, or they are playing this sort of fast castle Jav, poison Jav style with Farimba. Those are the two main styles, and largely most games I see go either in the feudal age, the Malian player either go spear Jav or they go for Sofar Archer while they build up some economy behind it or fast castle. So it's playing out the same way, and people are just fine tuning it, but it's super difficult to deal with, and so it might, not leave S tier, at least not in this season. All right, the next civ is going to be China. So China still belongs in S tier, but I think China got a pretty significant nerf with the Pro Scout changes due to the fact that now the China weakness, which has always been the farm transition, is now earlier. And so once the deer run out, which they do a lot quicker, the granary transition comes around, which is very, very difficult for China to deal with if they're under pressure. And so that's the kill moment for a lot of civilizations. That means that China is struggling at this point. But that doesn't mean that, they're, much worse in terms of how they play or they've changed significantly. They are actually doing rather okay in the early game, in the early mid game, and they're doing very, very well in the late game. You just got to get there, which is not too hard for China to do. So China will still be among the top bands of many professional players, but it doesn't seem that all professional players want to play the civilization, which is kind of funny. The next civilization is going to be Japan. This is one of the most undisputed S tiers I've ever seen. Japan, just since King of the Rockies, has been a very important pick ban in tournaments where a lot of players, both from the Chinese and from the North American roster, start to pick and ban this civilization. They find it extremely strong, and I get it. Yumi are cheap. They cost 60 resources, and that's the same for Sengoku Daimyo. And there are also some people are saying that it's going to be nerfed as well, so it's going to cost more. But they cost 60 resources, the Yumi, and they have largely the same power level and dynamic in compositions as normal archers. So they're faster, they still do really good damage to spears, and so that makes your mounted samurai play very, very strong. Another thing about Japan is their food. So they are not a Pro Scout civ. That's also why they're in this S tier, because they're not affected by Pro Scouts. So Japan is still going to go Kura Storehouse, get 12 farms for free, and then the wood income afterwards. And then they can use the map, and they're probably never really thinking too much about farms and food in general. It's something that very naturally happens for the civilization, where other civs have to plan ahead and try to get a feel for when is it that they should go more aggressive, and when is it that they should play more to a transition type style where they eventually get to the late game. For Japan, they can just do it all. They don't really have to worry too much about the implications of playing late game, mid game, or whatever, right? Because they are just always set in terms of food. So it's a very good civilization. It can also Dark Age Rush, managing to deal with many of the other S tier civs. Sengoku Daimyo is going to be my next one, largely for the same reasons, and also some unique reasons. So Yumi, again, I said it, is one of the strongest units in the game because of their cost and their speed. And the amount of Yumi you can make is just insane. It's kind of like Shuganu spamming nowadays. So Yumi just beats everything because you have so many of them. But they're also fast, so they are very well off in this meta, which is very cavalry-centric. And so Yumi are just in general going to do quite well. Other things about Sengoku Daimyo that makes them quite broken, I would say, is the Shinobis. Now, they're also expected to be nerfed. And the Shinobi right now just has this effect on the Civ and the matchups, which means now the civilization, right now, at least by the balance we have right now, it can just constantly have Shinobi, and the Shinobi makes your opponent units receive 50% more damage and slow, so you can't get raided. And when you attack, all your units do way more damage to units that they shouldn't be doing damage to. For example, I had many games where I was playing Sengoku Daimyo, and I had a lot of Yumi, and they were doing no damage to the Cataphracts. And the Cataphract, if you know, has 7 armor. All of a sudden, I just plonked down the Shinobi, and then I was murdering Cataphracts because now they took so much more damage from Yumi. So it's an extremely strong ability, as well with the Yatai early economy, allowing them to get so much more food, and the pacification of boars, allowing you to take boar very early without needing units. It's just a civ that can do a lot of really, really cool stuff. Next civ is going to be Ottomans. Now, this is a surprise to many. Ottomans have been in B and A tier for a long time, and it has seen its S tier days. Nowadays, I think it's an S tier again. Again, it's one of the most important picks in a draft because it's so good on many different maps, like Frisian Marshes. But it also does extremely well in early, mid, and late game, no matter the age, and many of the matchups against Ottomans, say I'm playing Delhi, say I'm playing Byzantines, say I'm playing Ayubits, are extremely difficult. It's so difficult to play Ottomans against Ottomans because they seem to just be able to take so much damage and still do better, or at least as good as your civ. So you can kill 5 vills, 10 vills on an Ottoman player, and because of military schools and the strength of Sipahi and their Vizier points, they can just get super far and not really get bothered by the fact that they are losing villagers. So it's a funky civilization that's kind of hard to counter because it seems that when you do damage, you don't really do damage. All right, next civilization is going to be left out of S tier and put in A tier. It's going to be Byzantines. The Byzantines, for me, is still an extremely good civ, but it's very predictable. And I would say the characteristic of all of the S tier civs is they deal with Byzantines extremely well. Now, some people are going to dispute that and say, oh, Ottomans don't do super well against Biz. In my opinion, in my experience, they do. And it's really difficult for Biz actually to deal with the cavalry archer style from Ottomans. And the timings just don't seem to do super well for Biz into auto. Byzantines is a rather slow civ early, but with the 5 cisterns, Golden Horn Tower, it is a civilization that avoided any nerfs in the previous balance of the game, and that means that the Golden Horn Tower is still pumping 5 longbows every 1.5 minutes on top of your normal longbow production from oil. And so you can get an extremely high quality army. The longer you stay alive, the better for your civ. You basically win the game if you play it right and you get to Castle Age. Then you're chilling, and it's your opponent that has to do something to you, not you to them. So Byzantines, an extremely good civ. I wouldn't, be mad by putting it in S tier, but I think the cutoff should be between Ottomans and Biz. Next civilization is going to be Delhi. Delhi is one of my personal favorites, so I'm a little bit biased here, but I do also feel that it is a civilization that has some bad matchups, thus it should be in A tier, but it's a civ that does extremely well in the right hands as well. And so you see these good players like Lucifron and Vortex, and they're just doing super, super well with the civ. Whereas you talk with other players, and I remember talking with a bunch of players from King of the Rockies who would rank Delhi much lower. And that's right, Delhi is a civilization that feels like either it's extremely far ahead and doing super well and you're raiding and you're just having a good time because your opponent didn't manage to disrupt your sacred sites for long enough, or you feel like you're just locked in your base, you can't do anything because you're getting chokeholded by early aggression from, for example, let's say Sengoku, right? So it's a civilization that can do well against many civ, but it can also die really, really hard against civs like China, Sengoku, maybe even Japan. Yeah, it's a civ that struggles a bit, but once it's online and going well, it's going really well. Also, to mention with Delhi, the fact that you have these H-ups that just give you instant value through scholars is also kind of a nice thing to have in terms of strategy, because a lot of the times when we talk about civilizations and what's the goal with the civ, Delhi doesn't really need to have a kill potential or something that they want to, use. They can just go next stage because it's the opponent that has to punish them. They don't need as much gold as other players with their civs, and so they can just age up if they have 20 scholars, and then they have a good time. It's their opponent has to attack into them, and so civilization. So it's for Delhi at least. I want to point out that it's a civilization that can dictate games very easily by just playing for the next stage, and that's really cool. I really like that about the civ. Next civ is going to be French. French is strong. French is extremely strong in feudal and land. And that's kind of the narrative for many of these civs here, is that, S and A tier belong to the best land civs. But many of these civs also do quite well on hybrid maps or water maps. Now, when I talk about hybrid maps, I've made comments about French in previous videos about Frisian marshes, and it's a civ I've also seen win on Holy Island against civs like English that usually do quite well on Holy Island. And the economy of French is naturally very good because you get more villagers, your eco is cheaper, your units are cheaper on the keeps, and so we see this more defensive style in the mid game where people are going for early keeps, and that allows them to make high quality units for cheap. Knights for 200 resources or lower, I think it is, and it just feels really, really good to play French in the standard style that we've always known, Knight Archer, because it fits so well into the meta right now. Now, it is affected a little bit by Pro Scouts, but I would say largely that it's all right and not struggling too much, actually. Think about Pro Scouts as having the same inherent food income value, but it's a lot shorter now. So there's some minutes that are cut off in total gathering of deer, which means that you're going on the map earlier. But French kind of deals with that just fine. A lot of players are also playing a more land-based, no Pro Scout based, I should say, not land-based, more map and no Pro Scout based style. So you see this split between players where some players, they're going for Pro Scouts, and the other players, they're going for pocket resources instead, which is cool. Both are very strong. Next civilization is going to be Macedonians. Macedonians is a strong civ that, like other civilizations, has a very clear goal. And that goal is to get to H3 and spam Radari. Very simple. It's a straightforward civ, good noob-friendly civ that doesn't really do much complicated stuff. It is straightforward. You either play Vinery or Hippodrome. Hippodrome is very good, gives you a super statted knight type unit at 10 minutes if you H up at 4. And then you have Vinery, of course, giving you extra silver, allowing you to make a lot more siege or what are they called? Cataphracts in H4. So there's some long-term decisions and some short-term decisions to be made in the landmark choice. But I think it's safe to say that you should pretty much always play Goldenhorn Tower with this civ because it allows you to secure the map very easily. So it's a good civ for that. And yeah, very clear goal of what you want to do. You want to get as many upgrades as possible on your cav. You want to spam Radari, and then you want to make your archers that have a -2 debuff on enemy units, killing literally anything. So very good civ. I don't think enough people realize how good it is. Ayubits. Ayubits is a largely unchanged civilization, but people are finding more and more styles with it because of the many age-up choices. So we're seeing a lot of industrying in H3. We're seeing a lot of dervish wing early into fast castle, and it's one of the last civilizations that can kind of do a naked fast castle. Although it's still rough, you can get away with it, and once you get to the moment in H3 where you're spamming Manjaniques, and you have a good amount of crossbows and infantry, or lancers and archers, together with the Manjaniques, nobody can kill you. This unit is absolutely broken. So if you don't know Manjaniques, it's the variant of Mangonels that allow them to fire this large spread AoE fire ability that does a little bit lower damage per projectile, but it's undodgeable. You can't avoid it. And so it's pretty much impossible to deal with a good amount of Manjaniques, like 4, 5, 6, 7 of them. Because what are you going to do? Counter it? With what? They have a massive infantry blob around it. You can't do anything. So it's an extremely strong unit, and if you allow Ayubits to get to that point, you can pretty much just surrender and GG out of that game. Rus is going to be the next one. So Rus, for me, I was not too optimistic when the changes came around because of the lower hunting cabin income and the fact that Pro Scouts got nerfed. It seemed that the Civ got a double nerf, which is not too fun. But Rus, I'm getting some cool timing still. I'm getting Pro Scouts at 435, 34, whereas before when the changes just came around, it was 440, 445. So I'm still getting the same, H2 Pro Scouts timing, but the food runs out a lot quicker for the Civ, and I think that's good. So what I would like for this civilization in the future is maybe up the gold income a bit. I didn't like the double nerf. You have to also think of the other nerf, which was Horse Archer, right? So Horse Archers also got nerfed. They have 2 less damage, and the damage output in general against heavy units is a lot lower. So you can't just go Horse Archer. But luckily for the Civ, it can do a lot more than that. You can go Knights, you can go Streltsy, you can go Horseman Streltsy, you can go Knight Archer. It's a Civ that does well with that. And so I think the Civ isn't a complete failure. It's actually quite well. It deserves to be at the bottom of A tier. With pretty much a largely unchanged playstyle, and maybe a little bit fewer games now with Horse Archer being relevant. All right, next civilization is going to be JD. So JD is an interesting Civ, and it's a very playstyle player specific choice. A lot of professionals don't practice this Civ, they don't use it, but the ones that do manage to actually get quite convincing results. And so I specifically remember a Marine Lord versus Wham game on Cliffside where Marine Lord was playing as JD versus Ottomans, and he did extremely well with it, just doing a standard only Knights Royal Institute style where he just got Bloodlines in H3 and then leveled JD up by constantly fighting. So you counter JD by not fighting, but it's really difficult to not fight against 20, 30 Knights. They want to fight you. And so JD has a very brutal presence as a civilization in a game, and you have to really play around it, which I feel like there's a lot of civilizations where, yeah, you don't have to play as much around it as you do with JD. It's quite oppressive, and if a good player has JD in a good draft of best of 7 or best of 9, I think JD becomes very strong. Whereas in a best of 3 or best of 5, it's mostly focused on the higher level civs here, the S tiers and the early A tier civs. Again, remember that many of these, placements here of these civilizations is, my personal opinion. And so you might find other players have, a different order of things and might not include the civs the way that I'm doing. Because now I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to be removing this tier. And then I'm going to say these civs are better for hybrid. You can still call it B and C tier. But I'm going to put the hybrid civs down here. And then I'm going to put the unsure civs down here. So these civs up here, they are the most relevant for me. They can do a lot of things. Some of the civs are great on water, some aren't. But they are the most relevant for me, at least. When it comes to hybrid maps are maps that include both land and water, so you can have a water economy. These civilizations that I'm going to put down here now are great for that, and maybe better than many of the A tier civs. But I don't find that these civs do particularly well on land. So I'm going to be putting Shuji first. Shuji feels like it got a massive hit from the Pro Scout change, and I don't really know what this civ wants to do on land anymore. I've seen some Fast Castle into Palace Guard Lancer play, which is not new. I've seen sort of do that beforehand and players before him. But it seems the civ struggles a little bit now. Maybe it's time for 2TC. Maybe it's time for the civ to just be reserved for hybrid map gameplay or full water gameplay like Holy Island, Kavasan, and I'm not really sure what to do with this civ on land just yet. Maybe it's still fine, but I can't put it in AOS tier because I actually don't know quite how good the civ is anymore. I don't think it's as good as it should be. How it has been, I should say. So it's going to be put there. Yeah, a little bit unsure. H3 the same. H3 is a really, really good civ for hybrid maps, can do early aggression, can do very well as a civ that, maybe still pro scouts and does some farms, but just because of that, kind of also struggles a bit. But overall, a very good hybrid map civ because it needs more economy. If you're playing it on land and you're making it to H3 and you don't get relics, you are playing a civ that has no identity. You're never going to be playing Burgrave. You should always try to play for correctness. And if you didn't manage to secure 2-3 relics, maybe more, then you have misplayed the civilization in Feudal Age, in my opinion. And a lot of the times, it feels like that's because of Pro Scouts. I'm not going to lie. That's what it feels like. And I'm not sure what the best way to play it with H3 right now is, besides Pro Scouts. Um, Maybe map resources is the way, but the problem with that is we're not playing to chapel bonus and inspiration, and so we start to lose villages by making um, the what are they called, the prelates. So maybe it's the Cistercian abbeys that we need to start going for, and then for pocket resources in H3. I'm not sure. It's a civ that is a little bit weird right now, and so I think I will put it in hybrid as one of the civs that are great for that. Next civ is going to be Mongols. Mongols also feels like it's always behind on land, and I wouldn't want to play it into a myriad of these civs. Like Rus, I don't want to play it into China. I don't want to play it into. I don't want to play it into Lancaster. I don't want to play it into Japan, Sengoku, Ottomans. There's so many civs where I feel like Mongols is just so unfavored, and so I'm not gonna put it there. I'm gonna put it in hybrid. Civ that I've seen do very well in hybrid maps. It belongs there, in my opinion, and that's also one of the only sort of situations where the Civ really becomes relevant in terms of its strengths of H4. Kaghan Palace. Now, it did get a change to the White Stupa that I think a lot of players haven't really tried yet. So maybe there's a style there where you go only Keshiks into White Stupa. I'm not sure. I've seen some people do that, but I'm not sure how successful that really is. Again, early aggression, docks with automatic emplacement due to OVU income. Yeah, feels really good. I like this Civ a lot for hybrid maps, but not so much for land. Next Civ is going to be Tuglak. So Tuglak is a Civ that was alarm bells, a lot of alarm bells when the DLC dropped. But about 4 or 5 days in, people figured out that you just have to play Horseman Archer against the feudal land or healer all in or whatever you want to call it. And the fort drop as well was also not too bad to deal with. You just ignore it or you just make units encounter it beforehand by scouting for it. Tuklak became a civilization that is a lot stronger in hybrid, and maybe it should be higher up in the hybrid list. I'm not sure. But it deserves a respected spot right now in hybrid as a civ that hasn't really been figured out yet. A lot of people struggle to counter it, including myself. And it's a civilization that is still very. I'm not sure about healer elephants in H3 and knights. It seems extremely strong. And in H2, radar elephants with the trample ability absolutely destroys. So there's a lot of stuff that we haven't fully figured out yet with this civilization that some players are starting to uncover, but they're not telling it to us. So we'll put it here for now. I would never pick Tuklak, I think, over any of these other civilizations. I will be honest with you there. But for hybrid maps, I certainly would. Next up is going to be OTD. OTD is a civilization that I saw recently in EGC last weekend, and it did very well against KT on a hybrid map. Marino versus Annotant. If you haven't watched it, you should go check it out. It was a great long game and surprised me. It was a good civ, and I think it's a civ that is most respected when we talk about full water maps due to its chapel economy and its decent worker gather rate. And yeah, I don't have much to say about this civ other than it seems to do the same as it's always done, not being the most popular pick, but overall doing okay. Seems to be countered by many civilizations on land, but on hybrid maps can compete with some of the best hybrid map civs, like China, like Shuji, like let's say Japan. So it's an interesting civ. I don't have many words for it. We'll have to wait and see. And the last civ I want to put in hybrid is going to be KT, of course. Now KT, I'm a little bit unsure how strong it is anymore because now I'm starting to see it lose to civs that it has never lost to before. I remember the last tier list I made, KT was put in, what was it? In its own tier as the most broken water civ, and it was for a long time. And I made a video on the patch notes for this DLC. And I was very, very frightened of KT at the moment. And KT seems to me to be a civilization that's undergoing a little bit of an identity shift. On land, I see professionals do 2 town center. On water, I see it not perform as well as it has done before. The timings are very different. The income is lower than some civs. And so the civ, I think I will put it currently in unsure, but it deserves to be down here at the hybrid level. I'm going to put it in unsure. And I'm going to do the same thing with the remaining 3 civilizations. So let's talk about them. The English is a civilization that I'm yet to experiment with. I will be making some videos experimenting a bit with English and talk about a new style that I was the victim of in my EGC qualifier matches against Scarlet Devil, and just try it out, see what we can do with this 1TC White Tower style, which is something that has always just been disposed of. You don't go 1TC into White Tower because you get no scalability, but it's interesting to me. And there might be something there in terms of going Council Hall into White Tower into Wingguard and having a really great one town center food economy. So, not sure yet, but I'll experiment a bit with the Civ. Other than that, if you're looking for English advice, play 2 towns in White Tower and wait and see. Next Civ is Golden Horde, currently one of the most broken Civs in the game, very bugged, apparently. And I want to shout out Real Team for wishing me cancer for playing the Civ in a recent Empire League match. And that's all I got to say about that. Let's keep the sportsmanship in the tournaments as high as we can. And let's just say Golden Horde should never have been included in that tournament. Besides that, I want to say this the civilization is probably one of the civs that is evoking the most amount of emotions from players. I've never seen someone hate as much on the civ and the players that use it. And the Reddit is the most dumb place on earth right now because everyone's molding about the same thing in this echo chamber that is, we hate Golden Horde. But honestly, just, play custom games or something if you don't want to play against it anymore. It sucks, I know, but the devs are slow, and I have no word about when the patch is going to come out. I feel you. I don't want to play ladder either, so I'm sticking to custom games. Yeah, it's a terrible situation to play team games right now because a lot of players are experiencing this very hard to punish style where everyone's just playing to defend the Golden Horde player as he fast imps. It's not unpunishable. You're still fighting 4v3 or 3v2 for a good amount of time in the game. But yeah, I don't know. It's a civ that is going to undergo some changes, I assume, and hopefully very soon. And then lastly, Abbasid is the same as English. I'm not sure where it lands right now. With all these pro scout changes and all these civilizations up here that don't really need pro scouts, like Sengoku, Ottomans, Japan, Mali, Lancaster, I wouldn't be surprised if Abbasid 2 Town Center would be good again. So I'm going to be doing a little bit of research into that, play some games with Abbasid, see how it feels, if it's actually as bad as before in terms of, dealing with somebody who goes pro scout. All right. So yeah, this is going to be my tier list. It's an S and A and then hybrid and unsure tier list. And that's the most honest tier list that I can make right now. I don't want to be just randomly putting civs in as I want to give you guys my honest opinion, and this is my honest opinion. We have a lot of civs in the game right now, and a lot of stuff needs to be uncovered, and it will just take longer and longer the more civilizations come around. So yeah, if you have enjoyed this video, check out my memberships, like and subscribe, and if you have any questions or comments, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. All right, ciao.
Yoki kana.